This video will contain spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen chapters 76, 77, and 78, Season 2, Episode 5, otherwise known as Episode 29, and Jujutsu Kaisen 0, the movie. So, the new season of Jujutsu Kaisen has started, and in this series, I'm going to be analyzing the story of the series as it airs and, as a manga reader, comparing the anime to the manga to see what they pulled over directly, what they modified or expanded, and what they just straight up removed. So let's begin with the 5th episode of Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen. First, I'll recap the plot and explain what chapters it covered. We jump to a year later, in August 2007. We see as Gojo has Shoko and Geto throw a pen and an eraser at him respectively. His infinity stops the pen, but the eraser makes it through and bounces off his head. He explains how he's been training to increase the efficiency of his cursed energy output and can not only keep Limitless active at all times, but has also managed to develop an automatic targeting system for Limitless so it will stop dangerous things from hurting him while allowing non-dangerous things through. He also adds that he's mastered Reverse Curse Technique, to such an extent that he has it going around the clock to keep his mind fresh and allow him to keep Limitless and the Six Eyes active at all times. He goes on, explaining how his skills are coming along to make him as strong as we see him in the present. Well, Geto seems checked out. Gojo notices and asks if he's okay, and though he says he's fine, his inner monologue brings us back to where the season began. He speaks about frequent disasters from the previous year, which I couldn't find anything other than an earthquake and a typhoon in 2006, but maybe that's what he's referring to, causing a large amount of cursed spirits to be born. Over the course of the last year, the fallout from the Star Religious Group's assassination of Riko has weighed on him to such an extent that his ideals have started to crumble, and he's even started referring to non-sorcerers as monkeys, just like in the movie. We cut to him meeting Yu before he goes off on a mission. He asks Yu if he's satisfied being a sorcerer, but Yu considers himself a simple man who's just happy giving his all doing something to help others. Suddenly, a woman chimes in and asks what kind of women he's into, revealing herself to be Todo's teacher. Yu responds to her, with Geto admonishing him for being so comfortable with her, and asks who she is. Yu dips, and the woman takes a seat next to Geto, reiterating her question. He demands she respond first, and she introduces herself as Special Grade Sorcerer Tsukuma Yuki. Geto recognizes the name, and she excitedly waits to hear what he's heard about her, only to be disappointed when he touts the Jujutsu High party line by claiming she's a useless special grade who just bums around overseas. She explains that the school and herself don't see eye to eye, as the school is focused on what she calls treating symptoms, whereas she's interested in treating the root cause. She explains that she wants to create a world where curses don't exist. She asks Geto how curses are formed, and he recounts that cursed energy leaks from humans and then collects like sediment in a river, coalescing into cursed spirits. Yuki confirms he's correct, and says with that being the case, there's 2 ways to remove cursed spirits from the world: eliminate cursed energy from humanity, or teach all humans to use their cursed energy. She mentions that there was a good model case for the first option in a person Geto was familiar with, Toji Zenin, who we know actually went by his married name Fushiguro. She mentions that heavenly restriction often reduces cursed energy to normal levels, but despite everywhere she's looked, she has yet to uncover someone like Toji who had it eliminated completely. She mentions that he always blew her off when she asked to research him, and it's unfortunate he died. But anyway, because heavenly restriction is rare, she's decided her best bet to achieve her vision is option 2. She tells Geto that Jujutsu sorcerers don't create curses, barring the instances where they come back as a cursed spirit after death. She states that due to the sorcerer's profession, they mainly retain cursed energy within themselves and keep it from leaking out. So, if every human were to be taught to control their cursed energy, cursed spirits would cease to exist. This is the moment where Geto's modern philosophy is born. He responds by asking why you wouldn't just kill all non-sorcerers. Yuki's response makes him realize what he just said, before she agrees and says it may even be the easiest way to do it, but that she's not crazy enough for such a drastic plan. She asks Geto if he hates non-sorcerers, and he says he doesn't know. He tells her about his former philosophy of sorcerers existing to protect non-sorcerers, but he says he's reaching a point where he can no longer tell the difference between the preciousness and ugliness of the weak, and is questioning whether non-sorcerers are even worth protecting. Yuki tells him that nothing is set in stone yet, and he still has time to figure out what he truly believes. Before she goes, she lets Geto know that somehow Tengen was stabilized one way or another. Then she hops on her motorcycle and rides out of this story for a nice long time. We cut to the Jujutsu High morgue, where we see Nanami complaining that the curse Yu was sent to deal with should have been a grade 1, even though it was labeled a grade 2, as we see Geto covering Yu up and telling Nanami that Gojo took the mission. Nanami asks why they don't just let Gojo take care of everything from now on if he's so strong. Geto thinks to himself, wondering if the marathon of being a sorcerer only leads to a finish line of their fellow sorcerers' corpses. Finally, we're shown the inciting incident that led to Geto's turn against the Jujutsu establishment. He's sent on a mission to a town in the middle of nowhere, where a curse has apparently been causing disappearances and deaths. After dealing with the curse, he stumbles across a cage where they've been holding 2 little girls, who the townspeople have been abusing in the belief that they were the cause of the curse, since they can see cursed spirits. Finally hitting his limit and putting up with the abuse of non-sorcerers towards those he sees as just trying to protect them, he massacres the entire town and takes the 2 girls in. With this act, he has attacked non-sorcerers, and is excommunicado from the Jujutsu world, branded a curse user, and subject to execution. We cut to Masamichi giving Gojo the bad news, stating that Geto probably even killed his own parents. Gojo is clearly stressed out about the matter. We cut again to a smoking area near Seibu Shinjuku Station, where Geto appears before Shoko. He lights her cigarette and she asks if the accusations leveled against him are true. He confirms they are and tells Shoko his plan to eliminate non-sorcerers from the world. She thinks that the plan is childish, and despite his protests in general, pretty much just dismisses Geto as being childish altogether. She calls Gojo. Nearby, in front of a fateful KFC, Gojo confronts Geto. Gojo's attitude unfortunately gets in his way and only ends up pushing Geto further away. Geto leaves, and Gojo ends up choosing not to kill him. Later, a conversation between Masamichi and Gojo reveals that Gojo has realized being strong alone is not enough, because it doesn't give him the power to save those who do not want to be saved. We see as Geto has finally adopted his modern look at the former Star Religious Group HQ, which is apparently housing some kind of offshoot religious group at this point in time. Geto's talking to the suited man who worked as an intermediary for Toji, who has apparently arranged some kind of conference or meeting for him to secure funding and a good way to collect curses. Geto walks out on stage and proclaims to the religious group that he's in charge now. Many voices oppose him, and he calls onto stage the representative we saw Toji report to after he killed Uriko. He drops a statue-like curse onto his head, brutally murdering the man in front of the audience, and through his might commands the people, who he refers to as monkeys, to obey him. The last thing we cut to is Gojo going to meet Megumi for the first time, as he expresses his distaste for the fact that Megumi looks just like Toji. He goes on to explain Megumi's situation regarding the Zenin clan to him, but Megumi's primary concern is whether Tsumiki will be able to be happy. Gojo tells him going into the Zenin clan has a 0% chance of ensuring her happiness, which explains why Megumi ends up deciding to go with Gojo. Then, we see as Gojo wakes up in the present, just before Halloween in 2018, as he's being pestered awake by Yuji, Nobata, and Megumi. Megumi asks him what he's smiling about, and he says nothing. With the recap out of the way, let's go over the basic points of the plot. 1. Gojo has more or less mastered all the skills we know him to have in the modern day. 2. Geto interacts with Tsukumo Yuki, and their discussion over her ideal leads Geto to realize his own new ideal of wiping out non-sorcerers. 3. A mission to the Styx ends with Geto massacring a village for abusing 2 Jujutsu-sensitive little girls, and he becomes a curse user. 4. Gojo confronts Geto, who is unable to sway him from his dark path, and is also unable to bring himself to kill him. 5. Geto takes over what remains of the Star Religious Group through brute force, and begins using it as a means to support his ongoing activities as a curse user. 6. Gojo goes to meet Megumi, which obviously leads to Gojo taking him in and raising him. 7. Gojo wakes up in the present, implying that this whole flashback was a dream he was having somehow. Now let's get into some analysis. The first thing I want to talk about is Geto's descent into darkness. There's some disagreement amongst fans just how much the different aspects of Geto's circumstances contribute to his turn. Some contend that his particular curse technique plays a big role, making him feel isolated from others because they can't understand how the specifics of using his technique affect him, specifically regarding the way he describes the taste. Others argue that it's more to do with his growing disconnect from Gojo, as evidenced by him switching from using the phrase "we're the strongest" to just "Gojo is the strongest," highlighting how someone he could look to and find camaraderie in was now beyond him and too busy to support him. I think it's important to note that either way, the crux of his spiral is catalyzed by his growing sense of isolation, making him also come to see non-sorcerers as monkeys as well due to feeling alienated from the rest of humanity. It's also interesting how the first time we encounter someone who uses the term monkey to refer to someone without jujutsu capabilities is actually Toji, who uses it when talking to Geto, so it's pretty likely Geto picked up that word from Toji's use of it. Another important note is how his interaction with Tsukumo Yuki brought about his plan attached to his new ideology. His reactions in that conversation appear to either show that she is telling him things he didn't know regarding sorcerers not producing curses, or perhaps it's merely meant to imply that he's reaching the conclusion she's building towards before she gets there, or that the conclusion he's arrived at was different from hers. When he says she could just kill all non-sorcerers, he seems somewhat disappointed that she actually ended up saying something different, like he was hoping she would agree with him but was let down when she finished speaking and it turned out she didn't. His reaction to Yu's death is also an important factor to take into account, as it seems to push his thinking in the direction that sorcerers also seem to die pointlessly, protecting non-sorcerers who don't appreciate them at all and would just as soon lock them up or do away with them if they could. This lines up with how he states he still maintains empathy, or at least compassion, for sorcerers in the movie, when he tells Gojo at the end that he never held any ill will towards anyone at Jujutsu High, adding this layer of complexity to him so he's not just stereotypical anime villain who wants to wipe out humanity because they're bad. Another thing I'd like to point out, and this is something that will continue to come up from here on out throughout the season given the nature of it, is how the establishing shots make it clear just exactly where some of these scenes take place in the real world. Of course, this is something Jujutsu Kaisen has done throughout the manga and many times in Season 1, but it's been a little lighter this season given the formatting of the story. For the sake of transparency, my source for this is going to be a Reddit post on the r/Jujutsushi subreddit named Virtual Field Trip Photos and Maps of IRL Jujutsu Kaisen Locations, which has a list of the locations and some have their Google Maps links to go see them on Street View. The post itself has manga spoilers though, so I wouldn't recommend checking it out unless you're a manga reader. So far, the only one we've had this season before this episode is the aquarium Riko looked at in Okinawa during the montage of the group having fun. Good times, right guys? Sure, I'm glad that's a thing that we'll definitely get to see again. Anyway, the aquarium in question can be found in real life under the name Okinawa Chiraomi Aquarium. It used to be the largest aquarium in the world, and there is indeed a tank containing the fish that Riko looks at. In this episode, I mentioned during the recap that the smoking area where Geto meets Shoko is outside of Seibu Shinjuku Station, as evidenced by the buildings in the establishing shot being just across the street. The street Geto and Gojo have their confrontation on is actually known as Memory Lane, which has some funny implications. And it does indeed happen in front of where a KFC is in real life, as I mentioned, as well as a Kaisendon restaurant, which is why you can see the images of the food behind Geto. I looked up what Kaisendon is, and while a lot of Japanese culinary talk can go a lot deeper than I'm willing to go in any of these videos, it can be most easily explained as a type of fresh seafood dish that is usually composed of freshly sliced sashimi, a type of sushi that is just thinly sliced raw fish as is, over a bed of rice served in a bowl. That's all for now, but after the break in the new arc, there will be plenty more. Finally, I just want to go over the in-between pages for these chapters in the volume release of the manga. This week, we mostly just have character sketches. After chapter 76, we get a first-year Ijichi, which is the older-looking guy with glasses that serves as an assistant manager to Yuji in Season 1, making a comment about his upperclassmen. After chapter 77, we get a character sketch for Yu Haibara in street clothes with some additional info for the short-lived character. He doesn't come from a family well known for their jujutsu history, though his younger sister can see curses, who he sternly forbade from attending Jujutsu High. We're also told he likes rice and people. Well, actually, it should say liked, technically. After chapter 78, we're finally told the name of the suited man, Shu Kong. with the Korean Hangul written above it. Wow, it would have been great if his name was ever used in the main body of the work, so I wouldn't have had to keep referring to him as the suited man every time. Anyway, the page also tells us he's a Korean citizen and a former detective. It also says Akutami thinks he's the coolest character in the backstory, which is funny to me considering we're literally never going to see him again, and I don't consider that a spoiler. According to the wiki, the fan book also has some more information on him. His hobby is collecting tropical fish. His favorite dish is cheese and cigarettes. Yummy! I've never really considered how the flavor of tobacco would go with a nice Gruyere. His least favorite dish is black beans. The cause of his stress is entertaining customers, probably at those nice restaurants Toji mentioned. It also says Shu met Megumi when the latter was very young, as he visited Toji's house since he didn't know how to care for a child. Despite this, Megumi doesn't remember Shu, which makes sense if he was that young. Apparently, Shu had known Toji for 10 years at the time of his death. Finally, the reason for him being Korean is because of Akutami's liking. Akutami likes Korean movies, and his favorites are the works of Bong Joon-ho. I'm quite fond of their noodles myself. Anyway, that's my episode recap and story analysis for the 5th episode of the new season of Jujutsu Kaisen. Make sure to subscribe and turn on bell notifications if you want to be here as soon as possible each week as I put out new videos for each episode as it airs, and feel free to drop a comment with suggestions as to other videos you might like to see, such as character analysis videos or explanations. Thanks for watching.